I'm going to go on a family trip with my parents from now on. And I'm using your black card, just so you know. When I got home, my husband, Jason, was nowhere to be found. It was odd that he wasn't there, and as I wondered about it, my gaze fell on a note on the living room table with that message. Jason had quit his job 6 months ago and now was neither working nor seeking employment. Just staying at home. He had quite a hard time at his last job because he couldn't get along with his boss and had difficulty getting work done. So, I thought it was understandable that he hadn't found a new job yet. But what did he mean by using a card from my wallet? I contacted Jason with my smartphone. He answered the phone with a laugh, proud of himself, but I said, "Hello? Jason? What black card? I don't have anything like that, you know?" "Huh? You don't have a black card?" "My name is Cindy Owen. I'm turning 35 on my birthday this year. Not to boast, but I graduated from a well-known university and landed a job at a major corporation that everyone knows. My husband, Jason, is also an alumnus of the same university. Jason also worked for a fairly large company after graduating. But he quit 6 months ago due to trouble with his boss. He still hasn't found his next job and hasn't been re-employed since he quit half a year ago. He barely makes an effort in job hunting and spends his days idly. Occasionally, Jason helps with housework and acts as if he has become a stay-at-home husband, even if he doesn't do much. "Hey, Cindy. I took out the trash for you." I was busy preparing dinner when Jason reported in with a proud face, as usual. "Aw, thank you, Jason. That helps." I made sure to at least thank him. Since quitting his job, Jason started to help around the house. However, most of the time, he doesn't take it seriously, like leaving dishes still dirty or soapy. Just now, as I went to the trash collection spot, I found that Jason had put out the trash on the wrong day. It was the day for combustible trash, but Jason had put out non-combustible trash instead. Before receiving any complaints, I needed to rush and bring the trash back, then put it out again on the correct day. Frankly, this just made more work for me. I've explained it to Jason multiple times, but he doesn't seem to learn. Lately, I've gotten tired of repeatedly pointing out the same thing and have stopped saying anything. And Jason seems to believe he's doing a good job with the household tasks. Man, I'm cut out to be a house husband, aren't I? Well, maybe you are. I nodded, exasperated, knowing it was pointless to say anything. And then, Jason would boast about his domestic skills to others. One day, when we were out together, Jason caught up with some neighborhood housewives and said, "You know, Cindy is good at her job but hopeless with house stuff. That's why I do most of the chores. It's tough, you know." "Really? That's tough. Your wife sounds terrible." The housewives responded with astonishment. I clenched my fists in frustration, having to listen to that conversation. Who is the terrible one here? After returning home, I couldn't hold back my anger and confronted Jason. "Hey, Jason. Why did you lie about doing all the housework?" "Huh? A lie? When did I lie?" Jason looked genuinely surprised, as if he had forgotten the blatant lie he told. His irresponsibility was so shocking that it took me by surprise. "Jason, go back and tell the neighbors the truth about the housework, that it's not like I'm neglecting it, okay?" "What? What's that about?" "If that's the case, then I'm being made out to be the bad guy who's all talk." Saying so, Jason suddenly became grumpy, stomped his way to his room, and disappeared. It wasn't as if he was merely boasting, he was lying. despite the self-inflicted nature of his situation. It was puzzling why he would react so angrily and sulkily. The next day, Jason left early in the morning and didn't return all day, only to finally show up in the evening. He came back in a good mood, so perhaps he had told another lie about something to brag to me. With that thought, I felt asking him anything would be futile and decided not to bother. "Hey, Jason. What about your job?" Jason, holding a beer and lounging on the sofa, replied, "Well, actually, Cindy, you're earning enough. We can get by on your income alone, right?" True, we could manage on my income alone. However, when I think about the future, we need to save a bit too. If we had children, they would cost money, so it's better to have some savings. I haven't given up hope of having children. That's why I want Jason to work properly. But he doesn't seem to agree with that idea, and things have remained the same. Every time he has a job interview, Jason complains. The conditions aren't right, and I don't like the interviewer. Whenever we talk about jobs, sometimes he even gets angry. What's with that attitude? You don't understand how much I've struggled. But, Jason, it's been half a year since you quit your job. Isn't it about time to start thinking about getting back to work? What? You think my emotional scars will heal in just half a year? After such exchanges, I felt that whatever I said was in vain. Jason, I spoke too harshly. Sorry, I apologize to ease the tension. It's not like everything at my workplace is going smoothly. There are hard times, and things I need to endure. But if I quit every time things get tough, it would never end. I've been working while enduring these things so far. However, Jason doesn't understand, nor does he try to understand that effort. Sigh, Cindy, you have it good. Blessed with great colleagues and a smooth career. Eh? I don't think I'm that blessed. That's not true. Besides, your family is financially comfortable, right? My parents worked desperately so I could go to college. I struggled with student loan repayments after graduation. I've had a much harder life than you. With that in mind, it wouldn't be so bad to have an easier life from now on. Saying that, Jason looked at me with a defiant attitude. I was at a loss for how to respond, unable to find the right words, as he was so greatly misunderstanding. It's not just Jason who struggles in this world. The difference is simply how much one talks about their struggles or how much they show it. But from his words, it was surprising to realize that Jason wasn't just unsatisfied with my income, he was also expecting support from my family. I remembered how Jason had been unnaturally affable to my parents. I thought he was being considerate, but apparently that wasn't the case. Recently, when my parents visited our home, Jason was endlessly smiling and friendly. So, Jason, how is your job search going? Have you found a new job? It seems like Jason can't find a company that fits his desires with good conditions. Instead of Jason, who just giggled without answering, I responded. Hearing this, my father said, "That's true. It seems that even getting a regular job isn't easy these days." He didn't ask any more questions, but there was no smile on his face. Seeing my father's reaction, Jason said, "I'm sorry for troubling your daughter and for worrying you. I apologize for causing concern." Or is that so, Jason? If you feel that way, would you try to find a stable job and get employed as soon as possible? Of course, I will work hard for that. Jason indeed said that to my parents. However, once they left, he returned to his usual self, lying on the sofa and laughing at the TV shows. Hey, Jason. You said you were going to work, right? Yeah, eventually. I'll start working as soon as I find a decent company that appreciates my worth. Oh, by the way. Jason seemed to remember something and was about to continue. At that moment, I had a bad feeling and thought, no way. I wanted to interrupt him, but I held back and listened quietly to what Jason had to say. Without any malice, Jason casually continued his story. You know, your mother-in-law has agreed to send us some money for a while. Well, just until I find my next job. What? Jason, what are you deciding on your own? I was surprised by Jason's words. When did he ask my parents for such a thing? In reality, we could live comfortably on my income alone. I struggled to understand why he would make such a request. Asking my parents for financial help without my consent was something I couldn't forgive. Why are you deciding things on your own? I'm going to call them right away to decline. Hey, there's no need to hurry to decline. Your parents are just trying to be helpful. Plus, you haven't been making an effort with your makeup lately, and you seem stressed. You should try harder to take care of your appearance like you used to when you were younger. I was taken aback and fell silent. Jason, who was saying this, had a belly that was beginning to show himself. I had many things I wanted to argue about, but arguing with my husband wouldn't solve anything. That evening, I called my parents and stopped the arrangement for them to send us money. Jason, who overheard the conversation, seemed a bit disappointed. What the? I thought it would be great to have more money for a comfortable life and increase my allowance. At that moment, when Jason muttered to himself, I understood his true motive. He wanted to use my parents to spend more money on his entertainment. Jason, don't ever do something like this again. I glared at Jason and told him. Jason didn't say anything and just relaxed on the sofa. Then one day, when I returned home, Jason was not there. It was strange that he was not around, and as I looked at the living room table, I found a note. I'm going on a family trip with my parents. And I'm using your black card. I couldn't believe the letter. I had tolerated Jason not working, knowing there was some reason for it, but this was unacceptable. I had patiently put up with Jason feeling satisfied with himself for helping out with the housework for so long. I had also turned a blind eye to his dependence on my income. But Jason's actions showed no gratitude and were outright disrespectful, making me shake with anger. Although I was furious, I was also puzzled. I took my smartphone and called Jason. Jason confidently replied, "We've just arrived at the hotel. I have to make life enjoyable for my parents, who have had a hard time for so long. But rummaging through my wallet without permission is a bit too much, isn't it?" I said to Jason with a voice full of disbelief. "Oh, and one more thing." "What? Is there something else? About the black card?" "I don't have such a thing, you know." "Huh? You don't have a black card?" Jason sounded surprised. Indeed, I didn't have a black card. Yet Jason acted as if he had stolen a card from my wallet. This was wrong. At that moment, I heard Jason scream and rustling sounds over the phone. Yes, Jason had been taken away by the police. My mother-in-law immediately came to apologize. I had no idea that Jason was doing such a terrible thing. "I'm so sorry, Cindy." "No, it's not your fault. Please, there's no need for you to apologize." The wallet Jason had tampered with, thinking it was mine, turned out to belong to someone else whom I had found by chance. I had intended to turn it in at the police box as a lost item and had left it in the living room. Jason found the wallet, saw the black card, and slyly took it out. One would normally notice a mismatch if they simply checked the name on the card. But we were saved by the hotel staff noticing before Jason spent any money. Weren't we? Truly, it was a blessing in disguise. But my son will reflect on this for a while at the police station. Upon learning of this incident, the in-laws seemed surprised and quite dismayed. My parents, having heard such a story, even went so far as to say I should get a divorce. I too had reached my limit with the accumulated grievances and was considering divorce. The mysterious disappearance of money from the wallet had occurred several times before. At first, I did not pay much attention, but upon closer examination, it turned out that Jason needed money for leisure and had been taking it from my wallet. How much would Jason need to depend on me to be satisfied? While claiming to be an unfortunate person, it was discovered that Jason had accumulated debt from gambling activities like casinos. I could no longer protect and support Jason's issues anymore. Mother, I'm sorry. I want to divorce your son. Sigh. I suppose there's no helping it. Thus, I decided to get a divorce. The in-laws were understanding, but Jason himself was reluctant to agree to the divorce. Hey, Jason. If you won't sign the divorce papers, I'll have no choice but to hire a lawyer. What? That would be troublesome. Jason had already spent all his savings and could not afford a lawyer. Finally, the divorce was settled. After the divorce, I went back to my parents' house after a long time. My parents told me to rest, but I deliberately continued to work. My ex-husband, Jason, came to borrow money several times. No? That's tough, Jason. I deliberately took a cold and uninterested attitude. His problems had nothing to do with me anymore. Please, Cindy. I beg you, lend me some money. I refuse. You have no more business here, right? Please go back home. The creation of such debt was a problem Jason himself, with a weak heart, had caused. While Jason wasted time playing without working, I had always worked hard, enduring unpleasant things. Why should I have to take on Jason's debts? Hey, Jason. It's not too late to start now. Why don't you work and pay off the money you borrowed? Cindy. If I could do that, I wouldn't be struggling like this now. Jason, with a troubled look, let out another sigh of defeat. I had listened to many of his complaints before, but I had reached my limit of patience. Jason, have I ever complained to you before? What? Cindy. I don't know what you mean all of a sudden. Unable to contain my anger, I raised my voice, and Jason staggered back with a look of surprise. You said my workplace was blessed right now, didn't you? There's no such thing. I too have had my fair share of struggles. But what can I do by speaking out about it? That's why I didn't say anything. And you? You act as if you're the only one who's unhappy. Ah, Cindy, I'm sorry. I was only thinking of myself. So please, just this time, could you lend me the money? Cindy Owen, what? Jason, are you still saying that? Are you even listening to me? Please, don't make me repeat myself. Moreover, I'm no longer your wife or anything to you. I have no obligation to help you. I let out all the emotions I had been holding back towards Jason. And then, I realized something. More than the fact that Jason was using cards and money dishonestly. It was his weakness and self-centered attitude. The belief that he alone was unhappy, that I couldn't bear. Everyone faces hardships in life. However, I simply couldn't forgive the attitude of believing that one is the only person suffering and denying the struggles of others. I understand that you've had your fair share of difficulties, Jason. You've always struggled with social interactions since our student days. But as an adult, you're supposed to endure and keep working. Of course, you can rely on me when things get tough. But that's because we trust each other. If it's just you relying on me all the time, I get worn out too. I think I have reached my limit. Jason was no longer the husband I loved, but a being who depended solely on me. If our marriage had continued, I would have inevitably reached my breaking point and exhausted myself to the brink of divorce. So, I believe that the timing of our divorce was just right. This is the end. Goodbye, Jason. Take care of yourself. After the divorce, it seems Jason was scrambling to find a job. For the past 6 months, he had not worked and relied on me for everything. So this was his own doing. Although Jason pretended to be actively seeking re-employment, I had long realized that he honestly had no intention of finding a new job. Hey, Cindy. Can I ask you something? Do you know of any companies that are looking for someone through your connections? Huh? I'm not quite sure about that. Companies were hiring. But I had no intention whatsoever of recommending Jason. I couldn't bring myself to introduce someone so unserious and irresponsible about work. Every time he asked about job openings, I declined. But Jason persistently kept calling and asking me. However, Jason tended to brag excessively about his academic background and to look down on interviewers. Additionally, he lacked perseverance and often gave up too quickly. Despite his character, when he worked, he constantly complained and boasted. I just listened silently and let it pass. So, I assumed he would give up on this job search very quickly as well. I was rejected again. Where is there a company that will hire me? Jason whined like this and tried to rely on his parents. But his father would not allow it and instead scolded him. Hey, Jason. You're an adult. It's time to stop relying on others. Damn it. Don't say that, Dad. I can't get hired anywhere, and I have nowhere to go. Instead of trying to depend on us so easily, why don't you just work, anything will do, and get yourself an apartment? After such exchanges, Jason could not get forgiveness from his parents and was excluded from their home. Eventually, he did not secure a full-time position and is still hopping from job to job. He spends more time looking for work than actually working. One day, I received a call from someone I didn't know. It turned out that this person was involved in the card incident with Jason. I'm sorry for my husband's rude behavior. Please accept my apologies. No, please don't worry about it. You're not to blame. The caller introduced himself as Patrick O'Connell and said that he had established a company during his college years. He had faced many hardships after starting his company but had also achieved success. I'm grateful that you returned my wallet. As a thank you, I'd like to meet and greet you in person. What do you think? Yes, of course, that's fine. I thought meeting with Patrick might be a good change of pace, so I agreed to the appointment. On the day, I put a little extra effort into my makeup, wanting to make a good impression on someone I was meeting for the first time. Patrick had arrived early and was waiting. His tidy appearance and stylish clothes made it immediately clear that he was Patrick. You must be Patrick, right? Hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Cindy Owen. Ah, hello. Nice to meet you too. I'm glad we could meet. His warm smile gave me a sense of relief. I had the impression that he must be competent at his work. Patrick was nothing like my ex-husband Jason. He was considerate and attentive. As I walked, Cindy Owen matched my pace, and at the cafe, when I went to sit down, she would pull out the chair for me. Her subtle considerations were delightful. While drinking coffee at the cafe, we talked to each other. By the way, how has your husband been getting on since then? Well, it seems he still hasn't been able to find a job. He's just wandering around, working part-time here and there. That must be tough. He's a grown man, yet so troubled. Hearing this, Patrick seemed half in disbelief. If you'd like, we have a cleaning job available at my company. The pay isn't high, and it might be hard to become a full-time employee. But would you consider it? Maybe it's time to straighten out that determination. At your company, Patrick? Are you sure? Yes, I'm serious. Our company is currently short on cleaning staff and we're recruiting. I can't say the conditions are great, and given his difficult personality, it might be hard to be full-time. That's fine. Given Jason's personality, a full-time position is out of the question anyway. While saying this, I smiled wryly. I never imagined that Patrick's company would offer Jason a new job opportunity. I immediately contacted Jason. It seemed he had just quit his job again, but he was quick to jump at the job posting. Really? There's a company that will hire me? Thanks. That's a relief, Cindy. Don't mention it. The conditions aren't great, but if that's all right with you, it's fine. As long as I can pay the water bill, that's enough for now. From Jason's words, I could sense his financial struggles. But I no longer felt any sympathy. I quickly ended the call and looked back at Patrick. Jason said he'll send his resume to your company. Is that so? That's good. I'm happy if I can help both of you. Patrick said this with a gentle smile. Seeing that smile, I was a little perplexed. Sorry to ask, but Patrick, why are you being so kind? Maybe it's because I feel some kind of connection. Plus, the two of you happen to be my juniors from university. Really? We graduated from the same university? Yes, surprised? But let's value these chance encounters. I think it's good to cherish such connections. Patrick said, there is an ulterior motive, with a mischievous smile. I couldn't help but smile and let out a laugh. He was funny and good at joking. And as we talked about hobbies and how we spend our weekends, we were surprised to find we had a lot in common. Time spent with Patrick was fun, and it allowed me to remember my hobbies in time. And then I thought, during my relationship with Jason, I had suppressed my hobbies to match his. That's why I had almost forgotten what I enjoyed over the long term. But with Patrick, I realized I could reclaim the hobbies and joy I had lost. I felt as if happy times had returned. Indeed, lately, I had been so angry with Jason all the time, irritated. And perhaps I had forgotten the simple pleasure of enjoying time. Months passed, and as part of my job, I visited Patrick's company. I accidentally noticed a man resting against a wall, and it was Jason taking a break. The company didn't seem large, and the physical work seemed tough for him. When Jason noticed me, he stepped away from the wall and spoke to me. Hey, Cindy. What are you doing here? I just happened to be here for work. How are you doing? Well, you seem to be getting by. However, it seems that Jason hasn't given up on his ambition to become a full-time employee at a major corporation. Hey, Cindy, what do you say we give it another go? I'll consider it once you become a full-time employee. Of course, but living alone is tough. I don't want to bother with cleaning the house. And all I eat is microwave food. Jason was supposed to have said something that belittled the work of a housewife before. Yet, here he was, complaining again. More than anything, his words felt devoid of any affection towards me. It seemed like Jason was just using me, only thinking about how to make his own life more comfortable. I felt his love had completely faded again, and I distanced myself from him. I have to go now, I'm out of time. Eh? Hey, Cindy. Wait. As he said this, I could tell Jason was approaching, so I quickly left the scene. At that moment, I heard another set of footsteps approaching me. Hello? Is there a problem? Aw, shoot, the boss. The boss is here. Jason was startled to see Patrick. I took the chance to get away from Jason while he was taken aback. Then Patrick casually stepped in front of me, as if to shield me. We can't have squabbles here. Please avoid causing a disturbance in the office. Yes, sorry. I'll be careful. Jason nodded but looked back at me with a lingering gaze full of regret. Patrick also looked at me and smiled. Then, he clearly said to Jason, "Actually, I am dating Cindy." What? You're kidding, right? Jason's face twisted with surprise. I, too, was taken aback by Patrick's unexpected confession. I had never anticipated such a development. My relationship with Patrick continued through work. Occasionally, he invited me out for meals, and we spent time together privately. Gradually, we had been closing the distance between us. Of course, being in our 30s, this was all considered with marriage in mind. Cindy, you're lying. This is a joke, right? It's no joke. It's true. Patrick is serious, unlike someone who would lie. And I can't believe it. Cindy and the boss. Jason said this with a mix of surprise and regret on his face, and then he slumped down. That's the situation. So, goodbye, Jason. With that, I bowed to Jason and left the place. This was the second time I had said farewell to Jason. In my heart, I hoped there wouldn't be a third time, and that I wouldn't have to see his face again. Later, I heard that Jason had resigned from Patrick's company. Whether he had found a path as a full-time employee or was searching for a new job was unknown to me and of no interest. I married Patrick and started a new life. We agreed to continue working as we had been. Financially, we were not in need. However, I loved my work, found it fulfilling, and was proud of it, so I wanted to keep working. Patrick's company was also doing well, with young and energetic staff. Hey, why did you want to marry me? One day, I asked Patrick. He answered with a kind smile. At first, I felt sorry for you. I thought your husband was a terrible person and you were having a hard time. But as I met and talked to you, I realized that Cindy is strong, reliable, and never lets her struggles show. Patrick. Did you think that about me? Thank you. I felt the same way. Patrick was always stern, never losing his smile even in tough times. I was attracted to his strength, and since his character was the complete opposite of Jason's, I think that made me like him even more. Now, I am grateful to have met and married Patrick. Cindy, I look forward to your continued support. Yes. I'm delighted as well. Thank you for your continued support. I blushed with an embarrassed smile. Half a year has passed since I got married, and I have been living happily ever after. And then, I took the first step toward fulfilling my dream of becoming a mother. At the obstetricians, my pregnancy was confirmed, and I went to receive the proof with nervous excitement. When I got home and told Patrick about the pregnancy, he greeted me with a face full of surprise and joy, saying, "What? Really? I'm 5 weeks pregnant now." I haven't had symptoms like morning sickness yet, but I felt somehow different than usual. That's wonderful. I'm so happy. Thank you, Cindy. I will study various things from now on and do my best to become a good father. I'm counting on that enthusiasm. Patrick hugged me tightly, repeatedly expressing his gratitude and joy. I was a bit surprised by his unexpected delight, but I was happy to share the joy with him. At that moment, I remembered my ex-husband, Jason. Would he have been happy about the pregnancy? And did he have what it takes to be a father? No, it would have been impossible. It was clear that I would have been unhappy if I had stayed with Jason. Since the pregnancy was unexpected, I decided to continue working until just before taking maternity leave. Recently, Patrick has been obsessed with shopping for baby goods. Since the baby's gender is not yet determined, he is preparing a range of cute clothes and essentials for both boys and girls. I'm sure a cute child like Cindy will be born. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I don't know about that. The child will also resemble you, Patrick. I hope that our child will inherit Patrick's honesty and strength in supporting each other, as well as my kindness and compassion. I wish for a child to be born who is as sincere and wonderful as Patrick. I am excited for the unknown journey ahead and happy that I can spend my days filled with such hopeful happiness. I've changed the land that was in your name to mine. My eldest son's wife covertly changed the land I inherited from my late husband into her name. It's true that we've had our differences in the past, but I never imagined she would go as far as this. When I looked to my eldest son for help, he just stared at me with a cold gaze. You always bully my wife, Mom. You're the worst. If you feel even a bit guilty, just gracefully give the land to my wife and show some sincerity by living out your remaining years as a housemaid. My son was on his wife's side. Just to be clear, I never intended to bully her. In fact, I felt like it was me who was being bullied. But in this situation, I didn't think anything I said would get through. Feeling it was pointless to argue, I decided to leave, as my son's wife suggested. So, I should just leave, right? I asked. To which she retorted, not crying, huh? Pretending to be strong. But who is really pretending to be strong? What will happen after I leave? These two haven't realized it yet. My husband and I are both in our late 50s. We have 2 sons, both married and living away from home. So it's just the 2 of us now. We live in a rural area, exactly like what you'd picture. It's inconvenient without a car to the nearest station, and there's hardly a bus service, only 2 an hour even during commute times. And none on Sundays or holidays. The only store around is a liquor store that's more like a general store. Our eldest son always hated this rural setting. He wanted to attend a more prosperous nearby high school but ended up at a local agricultural school due to his grades. This led him to leave home as soon as he graduated. My eldest son married a woman he met while living in his dream city. Since then, he has continued to live in the city and seldom visits our family home. Even when they visited for their marriage introduction, it was just a few times, with no other contact. As family, there are times when we can't avoid each other. Traditionally, the wives handle the family matters, even though there's not much social interaction. So, whenever I had to meet my son's wife, I always had to go to her. Because she dislikes the countryside just as much. When I visit, they say, "You smell like the countryside," and spray deodorizer around me. At first, I didn't like it, but now I try to take it as a trivial matter. After all, our relationship is already distant, and I didn't want it to get any more awkward. Meanwhile, my younger son lives in a distant land due to his work. The town where my husband and I live is the same rural town where our younger son grew up, not much different from the countryside. My younger son says the drive isn't too bad, and often visits us, showing concern for us. My younger son's wife is a very charming woman, easygoing in nature, and shares similar values with us, so our relationship with her is incredibly good. Amidst all this, my husband passed away while still in his late 50s. I was engulfed in sadness by this sudden misfortune. Before he died, my husband often said that his only wish was for me not to struggle and to live out the rest of my life well after he's gone. He said that if the land and house that his ancestors had passed down became a burden or hindered my life in any way, I should prioritize my life first. In other words, he meant that once I inherit them, I can do as I please. While he was alive, He discussed this with our eldest son, who traditionally would inherit the land and house. But our city-averse eldest son, particularly his wife, vehemently rejected the idea, saying, "Why inherit useless countryside land when it's not prime city property?" So, they opted for something else. The younger son also chose to inherit something other than the land and house. I later learned from my younger son that he thought it best for me to inherit the property because it was filled with memories of my husband and me. My younger son and his wife considered moving back to live with me, but it proved too much of a burden on his commute, so they gave up on the idea. Still, they've told me, "Don't struggle alone. If it ever becomes unavoidable, we'll welcome living together in the family home." I don't intend to sacrifice my sons' lives for the sake of the land and house. When the time comes, I'm prepared to make a clean break. So, I ended up inheriting the land and house, while my sons equally divided the rest of the property. After my husband's death, development in the neighborhood began, and the value of the land started to rise. I'm in my 60s now, but I still have the energy and enthusiasm to enjoy life in the countryside. Some people, disliking the development, moved even deeper into the mountains, and everyone has their own opinion about it. For me, if supermarkets and such are built nearby, I won't need to drive, and it seems like it could prevent family disputes over issues like giving up driving licenses in old age. Most importantly, if it reduces the worries of my caring younger son and his wife, I think development isn't all bad. Now, I'm honestly excited about the prospect of a more convenient life, but I never imagined that my peace would be disturbed by an unexpected move from my eldest son's wife. As development progressed and rumors started about more bus services to the nearest station and a new high-rise apartment nearby, I got a call from my long-estranged eldest son. He said something like, "My job in the city didn't work out, and I ended up quitting." Trying to make a fortune in the city was a fleeting dream for someone born and raised in the countryside. I bluntly asked him what he really wanted to say. Then, he said he wanted to move back and live in the family home. I asked, "So, you mean you want to live together?" And he seemed to agree, but his answer was somewhat evasive. Just about a month ago, we had a family gathering for my husband's 3rd memorial anniversary. During that time, my eldest son kept complaining about the countryside smell, just as usual. I wonder what changed his mind. In the middle of our conversation, my eldest son's wife suddenly interrupted. "You live in such a lovely place. If there's going to be land development and modernization, you should say so." Trees in the mountains have been cut down, improving the view. There have been rumors for quite a while about a large shopping mall coming to that area. My eldest son's wife, who never cared for this countryside land, now says it's a different story if the area becomes more livable due to development. The land and house my husband left behind are in a great location. Besides the place where our house stands, I also inherited the mountain behind our house from my husband. Will there be land purchases for the development? Are you selling the mountain behind? It seems my eldest son and his wife regret not caring about the countryside land before. Now, unable to ask for the land, they are cozying up to me, probably hoping for a share of the money if I sell the mountain. Oh, no. How could I? It's not really about the money, but about my husband, she said, with quite a bit of acting in her tone. I listened to her with skepticism, feeling like I was enduring a poor speech. To summarize, it seems true that my eldest son lost his job and is now unemployed. Their savings are so low that even next month's rent is in jeopardy. When I asked, "What about the inheritance you and your younger brother split?" she said they'd rather not touch it if possible. Since my husband's 3rd memorial anniversary just ended, she wants to ponder a bit more about how to use the remaining money. But if they're struggling, I thought they should use it. I held back from saying that, as it might be taken as cold-hearted. Struggling to pay for gas and electricity after rent, my eldest son's wife tearfully appealed. "Please let us live with you." "So, you're going to live in the countryside? You, who always hated it and clung to city life, think you can manage here?" I asked my eldest son if he planned to find a job in the countryside. I also suggested it might be better for him to find work in the city. I couldn't imagine my eldest son, who left for the city as if running away, now accepting a rural life. He said, "It's a matter of survival. We might soon struggle even to eat, so I need help." Until the end, he didn't clearly say whether he would look for work in the city or the countryside. So, I set conditions. Living together would be temporary, just until he finds a new job. I also added that he must work, even if it's just a part-time job. With the land development here, there were plenty of short-term job opportunities. I thought he would be hired if he wasn't picky. I figured that taking care of them for about half a year would save up some money and allow my eldest son and his wife to restart. Marriage is about helping each other. Naturally, I expected my eldest son's wife to work outside, even if not every day, to contribute to their fresh start. However, when we actually started living together, my plans fell apart. True to his word, my eldest son spent his days job hunting. He looked for jobs during the day and worked as a security guard at a construction site in the evening. At first, my eldest son's wife seemed cooperative, but as he started spending more time away for job hunting and work, she suddenly changed her attitude. "Ugh, this is so annoying. I can't deal with this. Shopping with a pickup truck, it's just too much for me." Shopping had become a once-a-week affair, and a pickup truck was more practical for that purpose than a fancy city car. It was my eldest son's wife who had initially offered to do the shopping. But after going once, she refused to do it again, saying it was embarrassing to use a pickup truck. When my eldest son was around, she'd say things like, "The food I cook is delicious," or "I want to learn, please teach me." But when he wasn't there, she'd say the complete opposite. "I can't stand this country-style cooking. I want French cuisine," she'd start. She'd call traditional home cooking annoying and skip her turn to cook. One day, my eldest son's wife said she'd cook dinner, so believing her, I went to tend to the mountain behind our house. Regular maintenance is necessary to prevent the mountain from becoming overgrown. Especially important are things like seasonal changes and leaf removal. Since my husband passed, I've been hiring young people from the village to help. But I couldn't always leave it to others, so I occasionally checked on it myself. After a tiring afternoon, I returned home to find it dark and locked, unable to get in. I couldn't reach my eldest son's wife on her phone, and just as I was wondering what to do, my eldest son returned. As I was explaining the situation, my eldest son's wife arrived and I asked her why she'd locked the house and where she'd been. "How could you? I did exactly as you asked and went shopping, and now you forget," she retorted. She then explained to my son that I had demanded an unreasonable dish and threatened to kick her out if she couldn't make it tonight. I hadn't said any such thing, and didn't even know she'd left the house. But my son took her side without question. "Just because we're living together reluctantly, doesn't mean you can bully my wife. She's not used to country life. It's impossible to find ingredients for fancy cooking here." He accused me of intentionally making things difficult for his wife. My son and I had our differences and had argued before, but being unfairly scolded like this was a first. Even though he was my son, he felt like a stranger, which was sad. I didn't expect him to always take my side. But in a good marriage, husbands usually side with their wives. My late husband always sided with me, but always listened to both sides, which kept our relationship with my mother-in-law smooth. But this one-sided belief in his wife's words and yelling at me was something else. Suddenly, my son got angry and said, "Fine, you make that fancy dish yourself and eat as much as you want. I'm going out to eat with my wife," and he threw the house keys at me before leaving. When I entered the house, nothing had been done, it was just as I left it in the morning. I felt so frustrated and couldn't stop crying. But there was so much to do that I ended up doing the chores while crying. The other day, the owner of a diner where my eldest son had eaten out asked me, "Is everything okay with your eldest son and his wife living with you?" This diner is the only one in the area, and we used to go there as a family when the kids were little. It's run by a childhood friend of my husband's, and my eldest son knows his dad was fond of this place. It seems that my son and his wife were bad-mouthing me there. I got the impression that it's mostly the daughter-in-law feeding these negative thoughts to my son. I didn't go into details, just thanked the owner saying, "Thanks for letting me know." The owner said, "If you ever need anything, feel free to ask for help," and thankfully didn't pry too much. But he did seem sad, saying, "To think that the eldest son, who I thought of as my own, would just swallow his wife's words." Do people change that much when they move to the city? After this, I decided not to expect anything from my daughter-in-law. If my efforts to get along don't get through to her, then it's just a waste of time. It's better to spend that time and effort doing household chores myself. If I retaliate for what's been done to me, I'm no different from her. As usual, I prepared meals for 3 and did the laundry for 3, no matter what my daughter-in-law did. Whether she took it for granted, thinking she had me cornered, or felt lucky about how things turned out, she continued to stay with an air of entitlement. Then one day, my son said something unbelievable. "About the land and house in your name, I'm changing it to my name." He showed me the documents, saying they were all ready. But he didn't let me get a clear look, so I became suspicious of his wife's story. Having seen the necessary documents for a name change many times from my husband, these looked obviously fake to me. When I asked his wife, "Is this real?" she snapped back, "Of course it is. From now on, I'll be the boss here. If you don't want to be kicked out, you'd better show some remorse for how you've treated me as your daughter-in-law. How about continuing as my personal maid? If not, you're welcome to leave." Her confident attitude made it seem like she believed the documents were real. I confronted my son, asking, "What's this about?" He retorted, "If you can't keep the promise of living together, then you should be the one to leave." I tried to reason with him, but he accused me of being the first to break our agreement. It's shameful to be raised by the worst mother who bullies her daughter-in-law. If you feel bad, just retire and leave everything to your son. You shouldn't take out your hatred for me on my wife. It's the lowest thing to do. Aren't you embarrassed, being a grown woman acting like this? It seems my daughter-in-law convinced him that I hate my son and therefore treat her harshly. The daughter-in-law, having heard from my eldest son about our differences in values and how we never really got along, probably used that to her advantage. Since my relationship with my eldest son wasn't great to begin with, it must have been easy for her to make it worse. I realized that nothing I say to my son now, no, anything I say, he won't believe. I felt it was a waste of effort to persuade him and remembered my husband's words. "All right, I'll listen to everything you two say. But give me a week to prepare." My daughter-in-law was reluctant, but my son agreed. I needed a week to sort out what to take with me, find a new place to live, and handle other necessary arrangements. A week later, as promised, I left the house. As I was leaving, my daughter-in-law taunted me with a triumphant look, "Get out already." But without reacting, I left the house silently, taking a mental victory pose. This was the start of my counterattack. I was looking forward to what would happen in a month. A month later, as I expected, I got a call from my eldest son's wife. She was furiously excited, saying that she tried to sell the land immediately to get cash, but it was already under development and she was refused. She bombarded me with a tirade of angry words, screaming, "What did you do?" In reality, there had been talks about selling the land along with the hill behind it as part of an area development plan. The condition was to sell them as a set. It was a welcome offer for me, since managing the hill on my own was challenging. However, I had wanted to live a bit longer in the house I shared with my husband, so I had put the sale on hold. During this time, the issue of the house's aging came up. A relative who works in construction visited on my husband's death anniversary and mentioned concerns about the aging of the house, which had been in our family since my grandparents' time. It felt so large living alone in a house that once housed 3 generations. I couldn't deny feeling a bit lonely in it. I started to think that it might be good to sell it after my husband's 7th death anniversary. Even if I rebuilt it, my sons were unlikely to live there. The company interested in buying the land and hill said the development would take years, so there was no rush. But living with my eldest son and his wife shifted my plans slightly. And I decided to sell before my husband's 7th death anniversary. The company even offered to bear the cost of demolishing the house and clearing the land, which was a relief. I couldn't stand the thought of my son's wife, believing in a fake contract, taking over the land my husband left behind. I didn't want to yield it to her or my son, who blindly followed his wife without any doubt. I informed my second son about the situation and my decision. He said, "It's sad to lose the house of memories, but memories are in the heart, not in things, so don't worry." Furthermore, my second son and his wife had invited me to live with them. We understand it might be hard to leave familiar surroundings, but our place is quite rural too, so you might like it. Touched by their kindness, I'm now living with my second son and his wife. I ignored my eldest son's wife's rantings, ending the call and blocking her number when appropriate. Later, my eldest son, having asked relatives about my whereabouts and finding me, came to my second son's house, begging me for help. I almost sent him away, thinking it was too late, but he began to confess it was all orchestrated by my wife. He then told me everything that happened after they drove me out. This all started when my eldest son's wife's friend introduced her to a judicial scrivener. Trusting her friend, she believed everything the scrivener said without question, including that she could change the land and house from my name to hers just by paying a small gratuity, which was even less than half the going rate. Thinking she'd come into a lot of money soon, she decided to cover any shortfall with my husband's inheritance. On the appointed day, the friend and the scrivener prepared the transfer documents and gave them to her. And she, without any doubt, believed them to be genuine and paid the gratuity. Once all the preparations were done, she explained everything to my eldest son when he returned from his part-time job. Tired as he was, he didn't think deeply and trusted her because she said so. If you think about it, it's absurd that the wife of a living son would become the owner of his family home. It'll be more convenient for your mother if it's in my name. As fellow housewives protecting the same home, we can have an open and honest discussion. Convinced by such seemingly reasonable words, he ended up agreeing. While my son was busy with job hunting and his part-time work, she meticulously planned to drive me out, brainwashing my son in my absence, and successfully made him do her bidding. However, when she triumphantly went to sell the newly acquired house and land, she was told it was impossible because it was already being developed. Panicking, she tried to contact her friend and the scrivener but couldn't reach them. Eventually, their phone was disconnected, and when she contacted the friend's parents, they said they had disowned the criminal and didn't know their whereabouts. That's when she found out her friend had been committing fraud repeatedly and had become a criminal. She later learned that several of her former classmates had fallen victim to this friend. The friend would introduce former classmates to fake lawyers, accountants, and judicial scriveners, taking commissions from them. When my son's wife mentioned the land, she was introduced to someone playing the role of a scrivener. Some victims had filed police reports, while others resigned themselves to considering it a costly lesson. But these people had homes to go back to, even after losing money. For my son and his wife, it was more than just losing money. They lost their home and the inheritance, so their immediate concern was not about filing a police report but how to deal with the situation. When I suggested they could rent an apartment since most of the inheritance should still be there, my son revealed that the cash card for the account where the extra money was deposited had been swapped. And all the money was withdrawn by the time they realized. They were literally penniless and begged me for help, with my son pressing his forehead to mine. Apparently, they were charged extra because the creation of the fake transfer documents was supposedly difficult. My son's wife went to withdraw the money with her friend, who likely stole the ATM pin then. Professionals can swap cards without being noticed. My son's wife, driven by short-term greed, lacked caution. Talking openly about the inheritance money probably made her an easy target. A little while ago, there had been warning messages circulating from my eldest son's wife's alma mater. They warned that some alumni were defrauding their classmates and juniors, advising everyone to be cautious about contacts or solicitations from people they hadn't been in regular communication with. But she had arrogantly dismissed it, saying, "Only fools fall for scams." I told them it was their own doing, driven by greed, and refused to help. There should still be some money that my son had saved from his part-time job. But he dismissed it, saying, "There's no way I saved any of that meager part-time job money. It all went to drinks with friends." Apparently, he had spent all the money he initially saved on going out drinking with his coworkers. "I'm not to blame for your lack of planning," I said, pushing my eldest son away once again. As I was getting frustrated with his persistent pleading, my daughter-in-law from my second son's family came home. Seeing her formidable presence, my eldest son might have felt a sense of danger and decided to leave. My daughter-in-law enjoys physical activities and recently started learning self-defense. She happened to return from her class just as my eldest son was there, and he got scared and ran off on his own. "I'm grateful for your timely return," I said to her, expressing my thanks. Later on, the eldest son and his wife started working as live-in staff at the diner run by my husband's childhood friend. However, they were soon kicked out for continually complaining about the low wages compared to the city. Do they not know how to repay someone's kindness? After that, nobody was willing to help them. One day, while living in cardboard boxes, they saw a new house being built on the land where our family used to live. My son's wife, in a fit of madness, broke into the house. "This is my land and house. It was supposed to be mine," she ranted, squatting in the house, which led to her arrest by the police. When the police contacted me to take responsibility for her, I refused. She then started a silent protest, refusing to speak unless I came. Even when the police asked for my help in persuading her, I refused. When they relayed that my son was asking for help, I said, "I have no obligation to help. Please, just put him behind bars." When arrested, my son's wife claimed she was deceived by fraud. While it seems she was believed due to similar complaints, it didn't erase her crimes. The fraudsters, her friend, and the fake scrivener, are still at large. And I heard that even if caught, the money they took won't be returned. It seems this ordeal has finally opened my son's eyes, not just about being swindled but also about misusing the inheritance. The couple eventually divorced. My son, unable to find stable work, seems to be struggling, while his ex-wife, fed up with rural life, returned to the city and worked in a bar at the city's edge. However, she suddenly disappeared one day. Apparently after accumulating significant debt. I've now officially started living with my second son and his family. Initially, our cohabitation was on a trial basis due to the situation with my eldest son's family. I didn't want to be a burden to my daughter-in-law. But living together turned out to be harmonious. We can speak our minds without tension, and my daughter-in-law, who is not overbearing, and I get along very well. We share similar tastes in food, exchange recipes, and enjoy our days together. Our relationship is so good that neighbors think we're actually mother and daughter. As my husband wished, I'm now enjoying the rest of my life with my second son's family. I visited my husband's grave, looking forward to sharing these stories with him.